What is up, everyone? You're about to listen to episode number 5 of the Third Floor Chronicles. This was conducted between myself, Joe Riga, and Ted Alexandro, April 23rd, Saturday night, in between the first and second shows. Check it out. Ted, can you describe your first open mic experience?
Well, the very first time I did an open mic was as part of a duo. My friend James and I, that I went to college with, my friend James ran a sketch group when I went to Queens College, so he and I had done some sketches, and that was kind of my first taste of writing stuff and then putting it on stage. So then when we graduated, he and I started going around to open mic nights in New York City as a duo. And I did that kind of sporadically for a year and a half. But that was really my first taste of open mics, and in a way it was a good thing because I had somebody to do it with. So whether it went good or bad or whatever it was, you had somebody there with you on the ride to the club, on the way from the club, so it wasn't all in your head of like, oh man, how was that? Did I should have done this.
Motivate each other too, right?
Yeah. So it was really like a nice entrance into open mics because I was with somebody. But then, like about a year and a half, 2 years later, when I started doing it on my own, it was good because I had that experience under my belt, so I wasn't walking in kind of completely unaware.
How long were you doing the sketch before you started doing the traditional stand-up?
The sketch stuff was really just college, so that was my senior year, possibly part of my junior year of college. So yeah, that was really it, But in a way, it was like just it was one of those, as you look back on your life, you see these kind of fortuitous, is that the right moment? Like where things just come together. So had I not done that sketch group, I don't know if I would have gravitated to stand up. I met my friend James, who was really the more motivated guy at that point. He was the one putting on these shows. So I was lucky to step into that and have an outlet and to kind of submit some sketches to him and say, I wrote these. I was like sheepish about it, like I don't even know if this is good or not. But
also get your brain thinking in a way it's not used to thinking before too.
Sure, yeah. So it was all new, but it kind of felt like home immediately.
When you were doing the traditional stand-up open mics, in your first year or so, how many were you hitting on a weekly basis?
When I started doing it by myself, having had the experience of the duo, I was prepared at that point to approach it in a more disciplined way, and I wasn't just messing around. It was like, I want to do this. So pretty much, I remember it was like almost a line of demarcation in August of '94. I made it a goal of trying to book a different open mic every night of the week, and I filled up that week in my calendar, and I remember physically writing, okay, I got this club, I got that, I got this, and there was 7 days in a row, and that was almost like my mental challenge of like, if I can find work 7 consecutive days, then I can be a comic. So that was like, that was the beginning of doing that. And that wasn't the case every single.
Were you doing the same 5 minutes each night that first?
Yeah, more or less. When I worked with my friend James, because we were so naive, we almost kind of went up with a new 5 every night. But then we quickly realized, you just keep doing the same 5 minutes and honing that. So yeah, when I was solo, I kind of stuck more or less to the same.
How long did it take you before you started featuring?
I don't remember for sure, but I think it was somewhere in the 3 to 5 year range. Because I wrote a lot and I worked a lot. I was lucky in that I lived in Queens. I still live in Queens, but when I started, I was kind of halfway between the Manhattan comedy scene and the Long Island comedy scene. So I could drive like a half hour in either direction. And Long Island had its own thriving comedy scene of 3 or 4 really good clubs that had a crowd on a Thursday night, a Sunday night, some of them even a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So I was in front of crowds, I wasn't just in front of comics all the time. So that I think helped my growth a lot too.
Do you remember the first time you featured for someone that you looked up to or were a fan of?
Well, there's guys that, like, the first guys that you work with that you kind of look up to are local guys. Local headliners that you see around and you're like, wow, this guy's, a veteran, really experienced, really good. So those were the first ones that, like I was happy to work with and to get their attention or get their approval. If somebody compliments you or things like that, it really means a lot. So those were the first guys. There's a guy, Jim Myers, who he was on King of Queens for a little while, but he was like a Long Island legend, and he was very nice to me. I opened for him a couple times, very encouraging. And then bigger names as I went along, like Jon Stewart before he was on The Daily Show, and he had some nice things to say, and guys like Mark Maron. And then in New York, you're always working with people who just show up. You're not opening for them per se, but you're on the same bill as Jerry Seinfeld will stop in, Ray Romano.
Did you ever have to follow one of those guys in the early
did.
stages?
A lot of them. I remember having to follow Adam Sandler one time. He stopped in, and the place went nuts.
How was it following him? How'd you do?
I think I did okay. I was still very early on. It was probably my first 3 or 4 years in comedy when I had to follow Sandler. I think he was on SNL at that point. And it was just bananas. I mean, I was just a fan sitting there watching him, and then I was like, oh yeah, I have to go on now. So that happens a lot. But then, now at this stage, I've followed everybody. I've gone on after Chris Rock, I've gone on after Chappelle, Louis C.K., so not that it's ever easy, but, you get a certain confidence level that I know how to get an audience.
Plus, it only makes you better as a comic. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
When did you start headlining?
I started headlining probably crappy rooms, maybe, I guess 6 or 7 years in. Because there's a lot of rooms around New Jersey or Long Island that are C rooms, not really your improvs or your better clubs.
So maybe headlining a C room and featuring in an A room? Yeah,
that was kind of the path, and you were getting enough of both that... how you always get every level when you think you're ready for it, but you're not quite. I was headlining when I probably had 30 minutes. And
a lot of crowd work?
Yeah. A lot of crowd work, a lot of pauses, and then same thing with featuring. You start featuring when you really probably only have 15 minutes or so or 20, and you stretch that into 30. But then, then you have more than you need, and then you're on to the next thing. So it's a process.
This is more of a strategic question as a comic. What has been the biggest challenge you've overcame on stage that you've conquered? Maybe something in the beginning you didn't like you were doing it, so you kind of worked on it to maybe improve on it. Do you remember anything that maybe you overcame in the beginning?
I think for me the biggest thing that I've overcome is a hesitation to do the things that I know I should be doing, and not that it ever really paralyzed me, but I kind of switched from in the beginning of my career to being very observational, very PG, to maybe 7 or 8 years ago, doing a little bit more, not dark, but maybe a little edgier, just themes that I hadn't really approached before, because I kind of dismissed it as saying, well, I'm not that kind of comic, I don't work that way. But these were things that I was writing or coming up with, and I'm like, well, if these are things that my brain is coming up with, then it is me. It's not somebody else.
You're just growing as a comic.
You're growing as a comic, you're growing as a person, you're giving yourself permission to embrace all sides of the way that you think, because it's all human, it's all you. So, you have to make a decision, though, because it might be more comfortable to work clean or work a certain way, and you might feel like, I don't want to compromise opportunities by working, quote-unquote, edgy or dark or whatever. But for me, I was compelled to do that, and it's really the best decision for me that I made.
You have a very unique style between transitioning between bits with the pauses. Is that something you've always had, or was it something you worked on over the years? How did that develop?
I think it is a process, When you're younger, I think, at least when I was younger, your mind is going so fast, and you're always thinking what's next. While you're on stage, your mind is kind of, you're thinking of a million things and you're going faster than you need to go, and sometimes like I would go so fast. I mean, I never worked that fast, but faster than I should have, because you want to connect with a crowd. And for me, I learned from guys like Todd Barry or Dave Chappelle, who work a little bit more deliberately. I like that. I like silence. I like moments of connection that happen in the silences and in the pauses. Because just because you're not speaking does not mean that you're not communicating or that you're not connecting. Just like in conversation, when there's pauses, you know, you have eye contact.
Part of the conversation.
Exactly, and you don't cease to communicate in the silence.
Awesome. You've had a great week here. I've seen you kill pretty much every show. Tell us about a time recently that you might have ate it a little bit on stage.
Yeah, I mean, I eat it all the time in the sense that, you know, like I'll go up with new stuff. Even on the first show tonight, I just kind of told a story that happened today. So yeah, like you give yourself permission to take risks, you know, and I know that maybe it won't kill, but if I'm invested in it and if I'm really telling it honestly and I'm engaged with it and it's interesting to me, then people will listen with that kind of energy. You know, they're not. People listen differently when you're being honest, as opposed to if you're joking or if it has that rhythm of like, now I'm setting something up.
Yeah, like you're doing a monologue, like a Tonight Show or something.
Yeah. So they listen with a different kind of investment when they know that you're being authentic.
Plus, as you develop fans and you gain fans, they kind of want you to take those little leaps and bounds that aren't that comfortable, you know? New stuff.
They want you. Yeah, I agree with you. They want to see you be a human being and not just a robot who's spitting out jokes, you know?
How has Twitter and Facebook and the internet in general affected your crowds?
You know, it's interesting because my career has bridged that. You know, there were no cell phones, I don't think, you know? I mean, it's really pretty astounding to consider, like, you know, the internet and the impact of that, and Twitter and all of it, websites. I think the impact is that it makes for a much faster connection with a potential fan base, you know, like, to think about, like, when I did my first Letterman, there was not any of this technology. My first Letterman, my first Conan. Now, if you do that set, if people don't see it, they can see it on the internet and watch it anytime they want. You know, back then, if they missed it, they missed it, and that was just your credit. And you know, that was nice, but you know, nobody saw it unless they were there and home. Especially comedians, everybody's working, so they probably didn't see it. So, yeah, it's just it makes it easier to establish a fan base, I think, and maintain to whatever degree you want, you know, however involved with your fan base you want to be.
Plus, if they're following you on Twitter, when they show up to your show, they feel like they know more about you already.
Yeah. Twitter is almost like you're texting with your fans, you know, and it took me a while to warm up to it because I was like, do I really want to do this next thing? Like, I did MySpace, I'm doing Facebook. Like, you know, is Twitter a little too intimate? But then my friend told me, if you're willing to play clubs in front of, you know, 50 people during the week, 100 people, you know, just doing these spots around New York, why wouldn't you access thousands of people from your phone, you know, and build that connection? So that kind of brought it home for me.
When you are at home in Queens, what's the home club you work out new material?
In New York, I kind of keep a foot in both worlds of the clubs, you know, like the Cellar, Gotham, the Comic Strip, all those clubs. But then also there's a real thriving produced shows from comedians in you know, throughout Manhattan, the Lower East Side, the Village, in Brooklyn. So even in Queens, there's the Creek in the Cave is a really good room. So there's a bunch of these types of rooms now with comedian produced shows that are very fun, like kind of conducive to doing what we were talking about, like taking risks. Crowds there tend to be a little more comedy savvy. They encourage risk taking. So yeah, you can do more storytelling or you know, just like, for me, it's been a really good thing in recent years to have a foot in both worlds, because it is my act has become better. Because I think it really lends itself to what we were talking about, like with pauses and storytelling and trusting yourself and not getting nervous or bailing, all those things.
What do you have coming up?
Coming up, I'm going to be on the Craig Kilborn show. I'm sorry, Craig Kilborn. That tells you how long.
It's a rerun.
I was on the Craig Kilborn show many years ago, but the Craig Ferguson show. I just taped that, so that's going to be on, I guess, in the next few weeks. And I'm going to be doing the Bonnaroo Music Festival in June.
Where's that at?
That's in Manchester, Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
Big music festival like Eminem and Arcade Fire, Neil Young. So it's like.
Well, how is the comedy aspect worked into the? Is it mostly music with a little bit of comedy?
Yeah, it's mostly music. They have like a comedy tent for people to get out of the sun and be in the air conditioning and listen to comedy.
How do you feel about like a festival versus like a concert or a theater or a club? What's the difference as far as on stage?
Doing comedy festivals?
Yeah, like, you know, kind of an outside atmosphere or more open where people are kind of coming in and coming out.
Well, you know, I like festivals in general because you're working with really good comics that ordinarily you wouldn't work with, you know, because you're usually all headlining. So like at Bonnaroo, I'm working with Lewis Black and Kathleen Madigan, I think Eugene Merman. So yeah, just all these great comics all in one place. So you get to watch them, you get to hang out with them, get to make friendships. Sometimes the venues are not the best, you know, like you said, it's not ideal, but the crowds are usually great, so that kind of compensates for whatever shortcomings the venue might have.
Cool. Well, that's it, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, guys. Episode number 5 is in the books. And if you like what you heard from Ted Alexandro, be sure to check him out online. He has a Facebook and a Twitter. He also has a DVD and CD special titled As Much As You Want. My name is Joe Riga, and until next time, thank you.